Tenim el plaer, l'immens plaer i l'honor de tenir un convidat especial. Ed Winter, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure, thank you for having me.
In a lot of your public speakings, and you also talk about that the veganism is more like a mentality or morality issue than the food issue.
Right.
If I go down the street and I start beating a pig or a cow, the people will come there and say, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's an animal." And then, when it's come the time to go to the supermarket,
Right.
the people buy this pack of pulled pork, cow meat, and lamb, and so on. So there's something missing. You're teaching your children to love the animals and read the story of this happy family of pigs, for example, that everybody know. And then you serve them for dinner a pulled pork. So it's some kind of cognitive dissonance. So my question is, how can we fulfill this gap? I mean, is the education or re-education the bridge to let understand the people that there's something missing between these two behaviors? Which kind of tools do you think, like educational tool, we can offer, we can propose to people?
Sure, it's a really good question. You're right in saying that we teach children to view animals in a specific way, to love animals. You know, children do naturally love animals. You know, no 2-year-old child wants to kill a pig.
Yeah.
Or kill a cow.
Yeah.
And so the way that we treat animals is a learned behavior. You know, we teach our children to believe that what we do to animals in slaughterhouses is okay. And so I guess the counter argument to that piece of education is to learn something new, is to be taught something new, is to be educated as to why what we previously were told is actually not moral, not okay. And so I think it's just about getting people to connect what it is they're supporting with the morals they already have.
Yeah.
I think, like you said before, humans have a violent history, but a lot of that violence stems from being taught that violence is okay. It's taught that these people or this species deserve to have violence done to them because of something that they're lacking or because of some way that they are. And so all of this discrimination and bias and this kind of violent narrative that we've kind of always existed with stems from the way that we've been raised, the way that the communities we exist within have taught us to see others in the world. So we need to shift that, and we need to get children and even more importantly as adults as well, to understand that our views are wrong. Yeah. So I think it's about that connection that you were saying. It's about showing people, actually, you care about animals. You know, if you did see someone kicking a dog on the street, you know, you'd probably do something. Or even worse, if they were trying to cut the throat of a pig just on, you know, down Las Ramblas or whatever it was, you probably want to step in and stop that.
Yeah.
And yet you go into a supermarket
or a restaurant
or wherever it may be, and you're paying for something that has actually inflicted more suffering and harm to a pig than what you were trying to stop in the middle of the road. Yeah. So I think it is about that connection. It's about getting people to realize that when they buy something, that decision has an impact on someone else. You know, that decision means that another pig or another chicken or another cow is going to be farmed in their place. And recognizing that actually if we are compassionate individuals, which hopefully most of us are, that contradicts the values that we already have. You know, it's hard to get people to see that. As you very kind of rightfully were just saying, you know, we do have this dissonance, this cognitive dissonance, where we're raised with a set of beliefs that actually contradicts the way that we do live. Yeah. And you're right, media and advertising plays a huge role. Yeah. And not only do these meat companies work with the best of the best when it comes to advertising, they have the money to do it. You know, billions of dollars to spend on, you know, perpetuating it and reinforcing this storyline, this narrative. But even though that's the case, one thing I do find inspiring is that even though for decades the meat, dairy and egg industries have, you know, monopolized, just owned advertising and just been able to say anything they want, that still hasn't stopped veganism from happening. No. And so even though that we're up against such a huge problem and such a rich industry, we're still breaking through little by little.
The veganism is becoming bigger and bigger. Even every day more people is becoming vegan or started to read books about veganism. A lot of them look at the documentaries. Big companies start to make a line of products that is vegan products, and they put the mark of vegan, the international mark of vegan product on this packaging, on their packaging of this line of product. But I would like to know what you think about it. They produce a lot of meat, and so they fuel these slaughterhouses activity and so on. And then they say, okay, let's make this fashionable line of product vegan, and we are vegan. And so the people say, oh no, I know that this company is vegan. They have a vegan product.
I mean, look, is it what we all want? Not really.
Not really.
And what I mean by that is, are we comfortable with the idea that these big meat companies who have caused so much harm to animals for decades are now casually producing vegan food, and we're supposed to praise them for that? No, but at the same time, we're in a situation where we need as much vegan food as possible. We need it to be as accessible as possible, as available, as affordable. Because the main criticisms that I get for why people don't want to do it is firstly taste, but then also convenience, cost, availability. And so, whilst I don't like the idea of meat companies making money off of people eating plant-based and vegans, I accept that we live in a very imperfect world. And so if this is the best way to get people eating vegan food, then I'll take it. Because even if they're buying from the same company, choosing the vegan burger over the non-vegan burger is still better from that meat company than it would be if that vegan burger didn't exist. So I think it's important that we know that these meat companies don't actually care. They're not bothered about animals. They don't care about the planet. They don't care about us. They're just doing it to make money.
The business of vegan business. No?
Absolutely. So we should be aware that that's why they're doing it. But at the same time, that's still a good thing, because it shows that there is money in veganism. It shows that there are people who are buying these products. Now, it's interesting that you said about using the vegan label. That's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess it would feel more comfortable if it said plant-based, right? Because then you're making it about the food, whereas veganism is kind of a philosophical issue, isn't it? It's about
it's not only food.
It's not only food. So I guess that there is quite an interesting argument for, rather than having like a vegan label, just like having a plant-based label, because sometimes people do get confused. Veganism is challenging the mentality. It is challenging how we view animals. Food is like a symptom of the problem, you know? Because we have the mentality we have, we've now created a system of agriculture that is so cruel. But actually that system wouldn't exist without the mentality. So whilst eating a plant-based diet is good because it's tackling the biggest cause of animal suffering, the mentality still remains that what we can do to animals is allowed. So veganism is about changing how we view animals, and just food is one big symptom of that issue.
Absolutely. When I first became vegan, I found a lot of food, plant-based food, that remember the taste of meat, of chicken, and even the shape. This is a vegan burger, and I eat it and tastes like meat. I become vegan. I want to discover new flavors, new taste. My taste bud want something new, and it was very difficult to find it. Meet the Future, the documentary. It was made by Liz Marshall in 2021. Last year, I see it a couple of weeks ago. It was narrated by Jane Goodall. And was produced by Moby. And this team of people, they make the documentary on the work of this cardiologist, Uma Valetti, this co-founder and CEO of Upside Food. And they work on stem cells, and to cultivated meat. What they say that the speaking voice of Jane Goodall say that we want to separate animal from meat making. And so they start to work on stem cell to create artificial meat. This bioengineering on meat is in which way it could be good for the veganism. Is a step forward. The future will be bioengineering meat. How long we'll always look for this taste of meat?
It's a weird one, isn't it? I find it really annoying and frustrating that so many people tell me, I'll stop eating meat when there's lab-grown meat. And I'm like, we care so little about animals that the only way that we will stop killing them is if there's something that's absolutely identical to them. I mean, I find that really heartbreaking. So it annoys me that something like lab-grown meat needs to be a thing. to get people to stop. But at the same time, we're talking about a system of food production that could eliminate animal farming. And give people no excuses whatsoever. So I kind of agree with you that it would be nice, and I think both things can happen at the same time. It would be nice to also focus on how delicious plants can be. Because we were chatting a little bit off camera before about one of the nice things about being vegan was just experiencing different flavors, having a fridge full of different foods that we've never eaten before. And that's a wonderful thing about being vegan. Yeah. But at the same time, my main objective is to end animal farming and reduce animal suffering as quickly and as much as possible. And if lab-grown meat is the quickest way to get to that point, I'll take it. And I think obviously we need safeguards. We need to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where we fall back into animal farming. And so making sure that we have big gene banks, because that's what they'll create, big gene banks, that are safe and secure, like we have with seeds, so we have the intellect to create lab-grown meat. But the reason we need to create lab-grown meat is because people are too apathetic and too unbothered about animal abuse to make the change without it. So it's amazing and really sad at the same time. I mean, the thing is, people often say, oh, well, eating animals is up to me. And the truth is, in the world that we live in, it is. People make that decision. But the question is not whether or not it's a choice, but whether or not that choice is moral. Because everything's a choice. We could go out and assault someone in the street, pickpocket someone amongst, and that would be a choice, but it's not moral. So we have to be less concerned about what choices we have, but making sure those choices in front of us are moral choices. And I guess lab-grown meat is definitely a significantly more moral choice than what we currently have.
As Vegan Association, we have a special focus on activities on children and young people, because we think that the children of today, the young people of today, will be the farmers or the vegan of tomorrow. This new generation will be strong enough to cope with an industry that is becoming more and more without any scruples, and they find a way to brainwash, to control, and in a certain way to command, say, no, don't worry, this is a free range. We use a human slaughter process. It's an oxymoron, human slaughter, no? What is a human slaughter? It's a slaughter.
It's just killing.
It's a slaughter. I do it in a moral way. You always say, put the knife on the throat. What is you? What is human in this process? How do you see the future of veganism? Looking at the new generation.
I mean, a good question as well. Yeah, I think the new generations are different, and what I mean by that is my generation and then the generation below me. I think that we were raised with a little bit more of a bit more scrutiny around different things. For my parents, my grandparents, they were raised with just one side of the story. Absolutely. They didn't have social media, they didn't have access to films and documentaries, whereas now they're there, we turn on our streaming services and there's something there that we can click on. And then social media means we're talking about these issues all the time. So generations now, and generations who are still yet to come along, they live in a very different world. And so I think having this access to information means that they're more likely to scrutinize things that we just get told as being, right and normal. So I think that there is that heightened added extra of thinking a little bit more deeply, hopefully. Add to that climate change, the climate crisis, people are becoming more aware of that. And I think people are challenging, in a way now, things that we just considered to be societally normal. Things that in the past we never really thought about, or at least didn't think about in the same way we do now. We're thinking a little bit more deeply about them. So does that mean that there's going to be a huge shift dramatically? I'm not sure. But I do think that what younger generations have is the opportunity to do things that older generations, including my own, didn't have when we were their age. I mean, look at the climate protests that were taking place just before the pandemic. Massive, tens of thousands of people.
And most of them are young people.
Young people. And what we've got to do, I think, as vegans, is inspire those young people to not just protest against governments about fossil fuels, but to also place their anger towards how they can make choices in their life. To protest and go end fossil fuels, and then to go to a supermarket and buy vegan food. So that we're kind of combining this outrage that we have with a sense of conviction to do something different in our own life. And that is happening. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right, Older generations will be harder to change now because they've lived this way for so long. But younger generations, when you're younger, you're less you hold on to your views a lot less than you do when you're older. You know, if you get to 60 or 70 and you've lived that way your whole life, to then change at that point in your life is to accept that for 60 or 70 years, the majority of the time that you will be here, you've lived in a way that's bad, that's caused harm, that you shouldn't have done. So when you're like 16, 17, 18, even in your 20s, and you're living the way that you live because of your family, because of society, you don't hold on to that shame in the same way. You know, if someone turns around at 21 and realizes they've lived in a way that isn't great, well, you're not going to feel as bad as if you were 70. Yeah. So I think that approaching young people who are more open-minded just naturally, who are less, I guess, bothered about their views being challenged, are more open-minded to having their views changed, is where we can really make a huge amount of difference. And then obviously they're going to have children, and then their children will have children. So if we can get them now, I think that's a really positive thing to then create like change that will last for decades, because it's a kind of a cliche thing to say, but the children are the future. So if we're trying to change the future, the children are the best place to start, right?
Great. There is something that the university educational system is going to do in the near future. Do you think they are implementing that, or
some are? Yeah, I think it depends. It depends where they are. So in the UK, there are definitely some changes happening. In places like California, there's some changes happening. There are, I mean, there's always, well, I say always, there's been for a while kind of animal ethics courses and philosophy courses that incorporate how we treat animals. But I think beyond that, what's happening a little bit more is changes to kind of food there. And what I mean is, one of the big roadblocks I often hit when I go to colleges and universities is people will sit down, they'll agree with me, but then they'll be like, but there's no vegan options, and it's the same option every single day. And I think one of the biggest changes that can take place in educational establishments is just more vegan options.
More vegan options.
And that's, you know, food is so important because you can tell people all the reasons why intellectually and emotionally they should make the change, but if they step out into a world where that food isn't there, it's going to be really hard for them. You know, if they go into an environment where, you know, they live in maybe a more rural area, and they're going to be looked down upon for being vegan. Those are sorts of things we need to challenge. Not just the mentality we have towards animals, but also the mentality that means that we haven't made vegan food as accessible.
Vegan
as
meal
it should
in
be.
university, vegan meal in companies, or vegan meal in the schools.
Absolutely, it's happening.
It's happening,
and I think there is a recognition now that it is more inevitable than anything else. Even people who sit down with me to debate me will debate me, but still say, well, you know, I think the future is going to be vegan, but it's just like right now I don't want to do it for these reasons, you know. So I think that there is this acceptance, and part of what we were saying earlier about meat companies producing plant-based food is almost that recognition as well that things are moving in that direction. You know, there's a reason why they're doing it now, but didn't do it in the 80s, because in the 80s no one was really buying it. So there is that shift, and the problem with change is that it feels slow. It will always feel slow. But actually change can happen very quickly. And we think about veganism. You know, you've been vegan for 5 or so years, I've been vegan for 7 years. So, you know, in the grand scheme of life, not very long for most vegans. And if you go back 10 years, veganism, there wasn't vegan cheeses, there wasn't Beyond Meat, there wasn't, you know, the vegan restaurants here that we enjoy, or the ones in London that I enjoy. No, they didn't exist. But 10 years on, not only do they exist, but they exist because that change is happening. So it will always feel like it's not happening fast enough. But actually, if we pause and we look back from where we were to where we are now, it's actually pretty impressive. And that's only going to increase. And the thing about veganism is it's kind of like this, if you think about a snowball, because it pulls in more snow the bigger the snowball gets. So that we call that exponential growth, right? So it's growth that just compounds really quickly. So, and that's what veganism will be like. You know, at the beginning, when there weren't that many, it's very slow. But once we start building up the snowball of veganism, it will grow much, much quicker, because the more people who are vegan, the more people will become vegan, because the more people are becoming vegan. And it becomes less weird, it becomes less normal, it becomes easier, more affordable, more accessible. The mindset behind it becomes less strange and becomes more commonly accepted. Oh yeah, you know, maybe we should view cows differently. Maybe we shouldn't do these things to chickens and pigs. All of a sudden this becomes a conversation that isn't weird, but is a conversation that is actually something we should be talking about. So it's slow but quick at the same time.
So thank you very much, Ed, for being here.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing everything you do.
Oh, thank you.
I hope the festival's a huge success.